Welcome to Tangential Soup, a weekly podcast discussing life in Australia, technology, food, fitness, and the like. Hosted by myself, David Caddy, Melburnian, independent developer and tea enthusiast, as well as my good childhood friend, Alexander Carr, Sydney-sider, slave to the man, karate practitioner, and lover of adventure. This week we talk about work-life balance, Wi-Fi encryption bugs, and Tesla insurance.
According to an article published to Nine News titled Australians Getting It Wrong When It Comes to Work-Life Balance, written by, I don't know.
No byline.
No byline. Okay, well, yeah, that's the title of the article. Basically what they're saying is that Australians are really bad at working long hours. I've worked in one other country in my life, which is Canada. And I worked about the same hours that I work in Australia. And I don't think you've worked overseas at any point, have you, David?
No, I haven't.
No. And I certainly, I sometimes think that my schedule doesn't leave a lot of free time for anything else. At times when I'm training hard at karate, I wouldn't really necessarily think that Australians are particularly hard workers. But maybe I just think that because in general, we do have pretty easy lives in the sense that we're a very rich country. We're very well looked after by the government in general, and we don't really face the difficulties that I would assume that other people would face in poorer countries, where you have to work to eat. You don't work to afford luxuries. Having said that, I can see what they mean, because certainly there are times when I work a lot of overtime hours, and I know that you do as well. And doesn't really leave a lot of time in your life to do anything else, does it?
No, I mean, I do vaguely remember this article, but is it talking about sort of unofficial work hours? Like you're just sort of, you know what your typical hours are in your contract or whatever, but then you actually end up working longer than that?
It doesn't mention that, but I know that that's certainly something that comes up a lot for me.
Because I feel like it must be that if this is true. Because I remember looking up not that long ago, like country by country who had the longest working hours in that, and like Australia with a few others had the shortest. And I know we have like basically the most public holidays and things. So overall, I think we work less, at least officially, than basically anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
So for this to be the case, then it would be like those extra couple of hours you might do in a week that are unaccounted for, perhaps.
Well, it's funny you say that actually, because they don't mention unofficial working hours. And now that I read the article a bit more closely, it just seems to be pushing some kind of agenda, because it starts by talking about Australians being some of the worst in the world for working long hours. It mentions that there were figures. I just put that in inverted commas for our listeners. Released today by the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare for its biennial report, suggesting that Australians are ranked third worst in the world for working long hours. And then they go on to say that Australians with low levels of education are finding it difficult to find work. And then they're going on to say that younger people don't have houses. And then at the end, it goes on to talk about the fact that the Commonwealth and state and territory government spend $157 billion a year on welfare cash payments, which has nothing to do with working hours. But it seems to me that perhaps good old Nine News is just trying to push an agenda here.
Probably. I should have been a bit more vigorous in this, in my screening of articles. I think I just saw this pop up and thought it could be an interesting thing, but yeah, it seems like it's not really based on all that much.
I don't think it's based on anything, to be honest.
I finally found this list again. Countries that have the longest working hours. This is per week. There's a couple with 50. Cameroon and Burundi.
Wow, okay. Alright, so Bahrain has a Sunday to Thursday working week. That's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Religious reasons, perhaps?
Probably.
Although actually, Bangladesh has a Sunday to Thursday working week as well.
Yeah, there's a few odd ones. Iran is the same.
Oof. So Cameroon works 10 hours a day. Burundi works 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. So actually, you know who's really got it right? Places like France.
Yeah.
7 hours a week.
But we're pretty good. We're like, if you sort lowest to highest, we're only 38, and there's not too many above us. Only Finland is equal, and so is Belgium. And Norway is slightly better, Denmark and France.
Well, there you go.
See, I'm only meant to do 7.6 hours a day. I don't get any
So-
RDOs or anything.
Oh, okay. Well, no, I have the same.
Yeah.
7.56. Right?
Yes.
Which I don't know. I never really feel like I have to be working to the point where I'm completely exhausted.
No.
I think that whoever wrote that article, seemed to me at least, had a bit of an agenda.
I think so too. They need to go live in India for a while.
Yes. Do you know what I don't understand though?
North Korea, 8 hours every day.
Oh, really? Oh dear. Sounds fairly North Korea-ish, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
How is it that we fit in the working hours of occupations, like, say, I don't know, hospitality, where they have places that have to be open on Sundays, so you have to have workers on there.
Mm.
And I guess what my question is like, is there any monitoring of the days that people are working during the week beyond, I guess, the compulsion that's put on employers to make sure that they're not overworking the maximum days worked, which I think in Australia is you can't work over 6 days a week?
It's probably true. I don't actually know about that. But I know the service industry is not good. Like, so few people get proper penalty rates. And when you're casual in that, you don't always get rates that you probably should for that sort of position. And a lot of the time they'll, sort of not necessarily factor in all the time that it takes you to pack up if you're like at the end of a shift or something, or set up, and you're just expected to wear that.
Yeah, no, hospitality. Having worked in hospitality, I can tell you it's absolutely horrible. I think that in general the profit margins are fairly low, obviously depending on where you're working and what the place is. But the profit margins are low, so people, they're not put on the books, so they don't get paid all the benefits of being a worker, such as having sick days and superannuation and everything like that. They're just kept off the books, they're paid in cash, and generally they just greatly lose out. And it doesn't seem that there's any real, policing of that for hospitality workers, of which there are a great deal.
Mm. Yeah, there's meant to be like fair work and all that, at least in Australia, but apparently like there's a lot of onus put back on anyone that's trying to, report bad practices or anything to come and prove it, and that can be pretty difficult.
Yes, basically impossible.
Mm.
And I mean, as well, basically what you're then asked to do is you're asked to report your employer who is paying you money because they haven't employed you correctly. If they've stopped paying you money, then it's very easy for them to deny the fact that they ever employed you.
Yeah.
Which is greatly unfortunate. Not the way things should be, but...
No, it's hard to get a perfectly fair sort of system, but it does seem like, at least in hospitality and that sort of fair work angle, it's very skewed towards the employers.
Yeah. Have you heard of the idea of having I don't remember if we've discussed this or not, having a 10-hour working day, and then having a 3-day weekend?
Well, we've discussed the idea of a 4-day working week before, whether it's 10 hours a day or just regular working days, because I think Sweden has implemented just a fairly standard working day for 4 days a week or something, at least in some businesses. I would love that.
It would be fantastic, wouldn't it? I keep on being told it's just not possible, because then you just wouldn't have people in for an extra day. But, certainly in some industries it would be a struggle, but in others, the fact of the matter is companies are open usually for 10 hours a day anyway. surely there can be some kind of shuffling that would allow for there still to be enough staff coverage for each person in whatever particular team you have, if it's a team environment, to work that 4-day week and then have the extra day off.
And again, going back to Parkinson's law to a certain degree, if you have people needing to do the same amount of work but in limited time, I'd say most people would get it done.
Yeah, absolutely.
And or, they might be more happy to stay back on one night or something, come in early. Because it's so much more convenient because you get rid of a lot of extra overhead like commuting time and all that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right.
I don't know why it isn't trialed more, because I know it does happen like in some businesses sometimes, but I guess people are relatively happy with the status quo.
Oh, definitely. I mean, there are always things that can be improved, and that's just the way things are. But
and like, there's no real incentive for businesses to switch to that on their own to a huge extent.
Well, there isn't. It probably disadvantages them in a lot of ways, doesn't it?
And I doubt the government's gonna, switch over to that sort of system because, I mean, at least initially you would think productivity would go down. Or at least that would be the fear, so they'd be very reluctant to switch to that.
It would definitely be the fear. I don't think it would affect productivity at all, honestly, but, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. What do you imagine it would have an effect on productivity?
Well, I mean, there would be at least an adjustment period, right? And so I feel like there might be a blip, either up or down, I don't know. And then it would probably level off to about the same.
Yeah, okay. You see, I think that if I had an extra day off during the week, I could be a lot more productive because I would just have a lot more or I'd have more me time during my extra off day.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It depends how people feel because, like, I feel like on Friday afternoons, productivity seems to decrease. So then you might...
If there are 2 Friday afternoons a week, potentially, if someone's having their day off in the middle of the week, then you're suggesting there'd be 2 times of reduced productivity.
Well, that, or, you just say, okay, well, Thursday's the end of the week, but instead of the afternoon being 4 hours, it's now 5 hours. So then you've lost an extra hour sort of thing. Maybe?
Okay.
I don't think it would be a huge difference. But then at the same time, like you say, or people will treat it like, well, no, because I've got those 3 hours, I don't need to like crib some, either sort of headspace to just sort of relax a little bit on the Friday afternoon, that they'll actually work harder all the way to the end of the day, knowing that they've got 3 full days to recover before they have to start again.
Yeah, okay. All right. Potentially some good arguments for either side, but...
But I mean, the trials seem like it's had a positive impact overall. And I can't remember what the company was, but I know there was one software firm that I think still does it, that went to a 4-day working week. And they say that they've actually been more productive since they did that.
Well, you see, again, that would make sense to me, but I think if something like that did come about, it would be based purely on the desires of the employees, because employers would think, I think exactly what you've kind of mentioned with the potential reduction in productivity. Not to mention, of course, the covering of people's shifts on those extra days off. Wonder what it would be like to work a 7-day working week, but only work, oh my gosh, what's the math here? 6 hours a day, maybe?
I think that would be truly terrible.
5 hours a day. Well, have you ever worked 5 hours a day? It's not very difficult.
No, I mean, well, yeah, but then you don't get a proper break. And then, for me, it's still like a combined total of about an hour and a half, slightly less, but about that commute every day. So then, I've wasted an extra 3 hours during a week.
That's a good point.
If I live right next door, maybe.
Yeah. I think there'd also be a lot of competition over who got certain days of the week off.
Yes.
What would be your ideal extra day of the week off? Would you make it a long weekend, or would you go the Wednesday to break it up? Or perhaps the Tuesday, because Tuesday's the worst day of the week?
Why is Tuesday the worst day of the week? Surely that's Monday.
No, you see, I don't think so. I think that, Monday you've got all your weekend energy, everything's good, you're kind of bouncing around. And then Tuesday comes along and it's just, you still got 4 days to go. Tuesday morning, still got 4 days to go. And, it's all bad.
Well, for me, like every second Monday is very full of meetings, and I really don't like meetings, so that's why I don't like Mondays. all planning for the week ahead.
Yeah.
And, 90% of it doesn't affect me. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of know what I need to do anyway. So it's just checking that off and listening to everyone else, which is, kind of good in a sense, but then also pointless.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know exactly those meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, like, they do have a point, but not a great one.
Mm-hmm. There was one of my colleagues moved to Germany a little while back to be part of a larger team doing autonomous driving stuff. And he said they do sort of month-long sprints or 4-week sprints. And to prepare for that, they had a 2-day sprint planning meeting.
Wow.
Yeah.
So just 2 straight days of meeting.
Yes, with like everyone on the team, which is, I think, more than 100 people.
That's ridiculous.
I don't know how the logistics of that worked out, but, given that so much is not relevant to so many people, like he was just falling asleep.
I mean, I'm sure there's a purpose to it, but wow. 2 days. Oh my gosh. I've had my leg in the same position for a while and I've just moved it and it's so stiff.
So you had karate just before, did you?
Yeah, so what we had today was a training seminar.
Is that different to a regular thingy? Regular training session?
Oh, sorry. I meant to say a full contact training seminar.
Right.
So it's training specifically for full contact.
Okay.
Which, yes, it's different. Just normal stuff. I really like the guy that does the training for these ones. Yeah, he's a really good instructor, but God, it hurts so much.
Oh, you have different trainers then, do you? I kind of just assumed it would be the same one like 90% of the time.
Well, no. It's the same one 99% of the time. It's just they fly this guy down every few months because he used to be a full contact fighter. He's competed overseas and stuff. He lives up in Queensland.
Okay.
So they fly him down every now and again to give training seminars on how to fight full contact. And he's really good, but yeah, it's really painful.
That's only because you got ganged up on.
Well, yeah, no, you're right. Actually, it was because of that. But still, even in general, they're quite sore because he has all these exercises that are basically designed to help you fight full contact, and the way you do that is you just really push your body as far as you possibly can to, I guess, condition yourself to be able to A, accept a beating when you're fighting, and then B, still have the capacity to be able to perform at that point, even when you're feeling super exhausted and you kind of feel you've pushed yourself to the limit and you want to vomit. One of the points he made today when I was in the Shark Tank was that everyone gets punched in the stomach, and that feeling you get when you get winded, so you just feel really sick and you want to kind of curl over your stomach and just kind of vomit everywhere.
Yeah. So
that was a feeling that I got a couple of times when I was fighting. So a couple of guys punched me pretty well in the stomach. And
so what's the Shark Tank again?
So Shark Tank is where well, in my case, I fought 4 people in a row. So you're basically getting more and more tired as you go along, and you do 1.5 minutes with each person. But every time you switch, obviously, you get a new fresh person, and you have still got to fight that fresh person despite the fact that you're getting more and more tired.
Does it just keep rolling through? Like, do you go back to the first person? Right.
No. So, well, I mean, potentially it could, but after 4 people, I was absolutely done for.
Yeah. So that's clearly a reference to the show.
Yeah, I think it is, yeah. I've never actually seen what is it, The Apprentice?
No, the Shark Tank. That's a show.
It's called the Shark Tank.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? Okay.
It's that one. I mean, there's been a few different concepts that have been similar. But basically, you come on with a business idea or an invention or something, and then you talk to these people that are multimillionaires, and you try to convince them to invest in your business. And there's 4 of them, and they're called the Sharks, hence the Shark Tank.
I thought that was called The Apprentice.
No, The Apprentice is the one that Donald Trump started, and that's 15 odd people, and they work at a company. And then whoever does the best job gets a proper job at the end of it.
That sounds terrible, by the way.
Yes.
And it sounds exactly like something Donald Trump would invent.
Well, it was pretty popular back in the day.
Is it still going?
Well, obviously not with Donald Trump, but I think there's still a version. I think maybe at least the UK version is still going with Ellen Sugar.
It's funny how far these reality TV shows end up carrying through. Is Big Brother still on?
Yes. I mean, I've
Australia.
been in Australia for a long time. No, not Australia, but I know it's still going. I think that's also in the UK. Still going.
Wow. Did you ever watch Big Brother at any point?
I shamefully used to watch a little bit of when they had that Friday night games thing.
Right, yeah.
Where they would run around doing stupid things. For some reason, I watched that for probably one of the seasons. Just that particular episode, sort of, on the Friday nights. Because it was vaguely entertaining. I don't know why. It's a really terrible show overall.
Well, the idea was interesting, though, wasn't it? And I think...
Well, the original concept, sure, was...
as a standalone concept, it was very interesting, but...
Yeah.
Once it... Well, got to the second season even, but... what did they end up on? Like 7 seasons of Big Brother or something like that?
It's a huge franchise. Probably in Australia it was 7.
God knows how many they've gotten to in the UK. I know this is the case for me, and I assume it would probably be the case for you, but the idea of going on a game show like Big Brother would just literally be the worst thing I could ever think of doing.
In the States, it seems still to be going. It started in 2000, so it's like 16 seasons.
Just such a horrible, repulsive idea.
No, I don't know why you would want to be on it, but I can understand it from a TV producer point of view why you would want to make it. So cheap.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
For so many hours of content. None of them good, right. But...
Well, I mean, you say that. I'm sure there was some hilarious drama that happened. I think I watched maybe 1 or 2 episodes of Big Brother. So
I think I watched a couple of the very, very first one.
Yeah, I think I did as well.
Because they hyped it so much. And it does sound like a vaguely interesting concept. I suppose it's sort of like the Truman Show to a degree as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But how it ended up being was... Well, I mean, obviously the people that they picked were a very specific type of person that, very much enjoy the drama of creating and being involved in drama. So...
Well, of course, you've got to pick those people, or otherwise it's going to be even more boring.
Yes, exactly. Do you remember the winner of the first Big Brother, or maybe it was the second one or something like that? Guy with dreadlocks. Anyway, he ended up winning it, and I think he won, what was it, like $1 million or something? Something along those lines.
Probably.
I think it was the same season that... who's that guy? Fitzy, I want to say?
Fitzy Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Former AFL footballer, very briefly.
Yeah, he had something to do with sport. And
yeah,
now
I think he played for the Adelaide Crows, and then he got injured, so he barely played for them. It was like a handful of games or something. But he was on there.
Yes, yeah.
And now he still does stuff for the 10 Network.
Well, that's it. And he's still around, so obviously it's done something for some people.
Yes.
And, had some market impact in some people's lives. Not necessarily in a positive way, though, I'd imagine.
How about poor old Gretel Clean?
What happened to her?
Well, she was just the face of Big Brother because she hosted it for so long. But, can you tell me anything else that she's done? I know she has done some other stuff, but to just be so firmly associated with that show.
Yeah, it would be a bit of an unfortunate association, wouldn't it? Yeah, I've got to say it. In terms of a career move, I'm sure that it was the right thing for her. But for anyone looking to do anything beyond that, it would probably be a bit of a mistake.
She probably should have just got out of it quicker, because she did like 7 seasons or something.
Did she?
Yeah.
Wow. What a direction for your life to take, right?
Yes. Did you see Lisa Wilkinson has moved to the 10 network?
I heard that that she quit Nine because they wouldn't give her a pay rise, and then 10 were onto her like the next day.
Yeah.
And apparently offered her about twice as much as she was getting with Nine.
Yes. Huge money. And she's going to be on the project, and what's her name? Carrie someone? She's on like 500,000 and she only signed a contract like 2 weeks beforehand. Now she's spewing.
Oh no.
Yeah. Because she's essentially doing the same job, but vastly huge pay gap. And what's his name that's still doing today?
Carl.
Yeah.
No.
Stefanovic.
Is that?
Yeah.
Is that him?
Yeah, Carl Stefanovic. He really wants to leave today as well, but they won't let him.
Oh really?
Well, he's still under contract and things, but he hates it. The early mornings and that, he wants to go and do something a bit more serious. Like his brother's a really serious foreign correspondent sort of journalist.
Oh really?
Yeah.
I've got to say, I would, if I was a journalist and I ended up on something like Today or 60 Minutes or a Current Affair, do you think...
I mean 60 Minutes has slightly more credible content than a Current Affair, but I know what you're about to say.
Well, I'm sure it does, but again, I don't really feel that's saying a whole lot.
A Current Affair is just a joke, though. And Today Tonight. They're literally just comedy programs.
Well, that's my opinion of them. I didn't know if that was a broadly held opinion or not.
Well, unfortunately, some people do take it seriously, but I don't really know how you can if you know anything about the things that they're showing, or just life in general.
Well, again, yeah, but I think that they. It always strikes me that they seem to have a bit of an agenda, and it shows like those that seem to really push whatever it is they're trying to push or peddle. Because it seems there's a lot of product placement, a lot of biased reporting. Well, if it could even be called reporting.
Some of them are just ads. Like
they
literally
are.
Ads for a product.
Yes.
Or a service.
Yes.
Disguised as news.
Very thinly disguised as news, I think.
Like, they had, like, McHappy Day, like, sort of running on the news networks and that the other day as well when that was on, which is McDonald's annual thing where you buy a Big Mac on a particular day, a percentage goes to the Ronald McDonald Foundation.
Yeah.
And yeah, okay, it's sort of a good cause, etc., etc., etc. But because McDonald's is such a big advertiser on all these platforms, all these networks, all these channels,
yeah,
they're very happy to give them free advertising, essentially, which is, 5-minute news segments for this thing. And it's like, it's not anything. Like, there's so many other causes in the world that they could be plugging. I mean,
yeah.
Puerto Rico is still, underwater. No, not exactly, but, there's more pressing matters in the world, really, that they could be bringing people's attention to. But it's because of the other commercial arrangement they have with these products that they're happy to put this in a news category, even though it's not news.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's disgusting. I mean, I'm sure that all the journalists who are doing the reporting on it are fully aware of the situation. Probably a lot of them are quite disgusted with themselves.
Yes. There's a lot, too, in like newspapers now that there might be 3 or 4 page sort of spreads on something that are purely paid for content.
Yeah.
And there's quite a few examples where it hasn't actually been listed as so, because they are actually, meant to make the differentiation between the two sorts of content. And if it is a paid spot, then it should be labeled as such.
Yeah.
Even though when it's labeled, it's still... Like, it's usually fairly obvious, you can kind of just tell, but the actual labeling is this small little thing down the bottom, and, they don't really want you to look at it.
Well, no, because I guess the location of the paid content is put there in such a way that I guess certain people might mistake it for being actual news.
Well, exactly. But from everyone's point of view that's involved in this, like the company wants it to appear as news because then it seems a bit more credible and then people might be a bit more engaged from it. And then from the newspaper's point of view, well, they've won on both counts because they're getting paid for it. So it's advertisement. And they've already filled up 3 pages of their newspaper. So they don't have to find extra content.
You're so right, though. Oh my gosh.
So,
such a sad point, but it's so true.
I think more and more is going to go that way.
Oh, yeah, I think everything is already going that way, to be honest. But... oh dear. What a world to live in.
What a world.
I like the ideas that newspapers are happy with it because they filled up a few pages.
Well, it's true, right? You know, they're cutting journalists left, right, and centre, and quality control's going down. Like, if you have content that's basically served to you on a plate, even if it is advertising, then you might need to tweak it a tiny bit, but it's basically good to go, and you've got something to roll with.
Yeah.
It's just made your job easier.
Yeah, no, you're right.
With limited resources. Like, these editors and, you know, people only have so much to work with these days.
That's true. Oh my gosh.
Did you hear about this Wi-Fi encryption bug vulnerability?
Look, I'm just going to be real with you, David. It didn't even cross my radar.
Well, it's pretty crazy in one sense that it basically affects every Wi-Fi device that we're currently using because it affects specifically the WPA2 encryption standard. So this vulnerability means that through a very intricate sort of process where it verifies and a sharing of public keys between 2 different devices when it establishes a connection, that you can sort of trick it into going into a state where it gives you a still kind of random but known sequence of numbers because it's all, you know, based on all these encryption algorithms are based on mathematical formula and that, and they are very secure, but it sort of can get reset in this very specific scenario that these researchers have discovered. And then when it does that, then you sort of know like where it's starting from. And if you know that, then you can figure out the rest. It's still tricky, but you can do it. And then you can get access to the Wi-Fi and then you can act as like a go-between. So you can either serve people on the network malicious content potentially, or you can just listen to all the traffic that is going between you and your router.
Right, okay.
Sort of thing. So on one hand, it's super scary because that's a lot of damage they can do, and it basically affects every Wi-Fi device currently in use. The only good thing is, though, that the attack has to be local. Like, you have to be in the vicinity of a Wi-Fi network. So there's going to be no vulnerability that someone can, say, put up on the web that then is going to be able to listen to everyone sort of thing, if that makes sense. They have to be on the Wi-Fi network itself.
Okay, so basically you've got to be there.
Yeah, so it's not, you know, it's not physical access, but it's still a very limited proximity access. So it's not a bigger threat as it potentially could be. But essentially the moral of this story is update your devices. Because it's to do with encryption, even if you update only sort of one of the devices, as in if you update your router, which is probably unlikely because router manufacturers have a tendency not to be too great on the updates. But if you update your phone and your laptop and, you know, whatever you're using to browse the content, that's probably enough to secure you, you know, from anyone like either serving you bad content or listening to what you're broadcasting on the network.
Okay, well, that makes sense.
And updates aren't available for everything right now, but they will be very shortly. So just keep your stuff up to date is essentially the takeaway message here.
Look, I've got to say, I know that we have talked about cybersecurity in the past and the importance of it and everything like that. And I do completely understand and agree with everything you've kind of said around, the dangers of what can be released when your cybersecurity is threatened. However, I think with something like this, certainly through using my own home network, and I don't really use other other Wi-Fi networks. I don't know I don't know what the danger would be to me specifically.
Mm.
Because, who would necessarily go to that much information to get into my Wi-Fi network? I know that there are probably people that would, but...
Well, yeah, if you're not a specific target, it's probably not going to happen.
That's what
I guess with this vulnerability, one thing could be that maybe try not to use public Wi-Fi networks for at least the next little while.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I don't really use them anyway.
Because that could be quite a target, right? And again,
absolutely.
there's a potential here where you could potentially go to like a website on a public network or even a private network, but say a public network, and then they serve you malicious content along with the regular website content. You don't really know what's happening, but then all of a sudden your computer is infected with some sort of virus that then can do a lot of damage, either ransomware or anything else.
Yes.
So it's sort of just like a point to gain entry that they wouldn't have had before.
Right, okay.
But yeah, with your private home Wi-Fi network, is someone literally going to drive along the street targeting every house and doing this thing? It's probably going to happen to a couple of people just because this is out there now. It's sort of known information.
Yeah.
And people will be mucking around with these things. So I dare say there will be cases of this. But is it likely to happen to you? Absolutely not. It's very, very, very unlikely. But if it did happen, you could be very sad very quickly. So keep your stuff up to date.
When you say keep my stuff up to date, though, sometimes my phone tells me I should update it, and I do. Is that basically what you're saying?
Pretty much.
But sometimes I put it off for a couple of days.
Well, yeah. I would say update straight away when you get an update. Unfortunate thing with Android phones is that I think you're probably okay because Motorola's not too bad. But a lot of manufacturers either take forever or just don't actually release any updates, even if it's only a security update. So then, if you have no update to install, then obviously you're not secure. But yeah, in your case, I think you'll be fine. Give most manufacturers probably another 4 to 6 weeks, and they'll probably have it finished and released. Hopefully sooner than that. Apple hasn't released anything yet, but iOS is, I think, already safe just from the way that they do it. But on Mac, there's a beta version that's available with a fix, but that should be rolled out soon as well to the proper production version. I think some Windows systems are okay, but there's a fix in the work. And a lot of Linux systems are still vulnerable, as well as Android.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because it's all the way, even though this is sort of a standard security system, all the platforms implement it marginally differently. And so some are just inherently okay, and then some are not. But hopefully they'll all be okay sort of soonish.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, look, honestly, I am glad that you tell me about these things, because I don't think it's something that I would ever think about.
Well, again, this is not a huge problem. It's more just sort of amazing that, this technology that we're using, it was developed probably about 10 years ago, sort of thing. And the actual algorithm, the encryption algorithm, is still very secure. At a fundamental conceptual level, it's still kind of cutting edge. Maybe not 100%, but it's good enough, really. It's very secure. But the implementation that has been used for probably 10 years has, just a couple of weeks ago had this vulnerability discovered within it, which just, it kind of boggles the mind that something that's used everywhere so extensively and for so many number of years can still have these fundamental bugs in it.
Yes, I completely agree. And I think I guess it just goes to show, doesn't it? There are people that are trying to, I suppose, hack these things as well all the time.
Absolutely. And that's why these people found it, is because, they were looking specifically to try and find something wrong with these things.
Yeah.
But, you've got to think that these people weren't malicious, so, they've exposed it to everyone and they've said, hey, this is what's wrong and this is how you can fix it, and everyone should go fix it.
Yeah.
But then there's obviously people that are doing it for nefarious purposes that are never going to say what the bug is because they want to use it.
It just makes me wonder, though, if it were the case that somebody who had evil intentions were to discover this, would they have been able to utilize it before it was discovered by anyone else? I assume so, because it hasn't been discovered up until now.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And in this particular case, it's of limited utility to those sorts of people. But it makes you think, when there's something like this to a fundamental part of the system, how many other things out there, vulnerabilities that have only been discovered by a very small group of people that could be potentially using it for harm. It's unfortunate, but these systems are so complex that I dare say there's many, many of them.
Well, that's interesting.
Not to mention like the FBI and that.
Yes. I don't know. I'd say
that we now know were using vulnerabilities that they never reported to anyone because they wanted to use them.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because it's supposed to be a government organisation, but they don't seem to help the people, do they?
No. Well, it's not about protecting the innocent people; it's about getting the criminals.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Funny how that works, isn't it? I think that is it the case though that usually once there is an incident where something of a larger scale happens, it is usually the case where the way that the people broke into the system is discovered just through looking at it. Like if someone were to use this against, say, a government organisation, would the government organisation then be able to work out how it happened? Just by looking at what has happened to their system?
That would vary by case basis. This one would be pretty tricky to understand, at least initially. You might be able to get there. I mean, you would certainly understand that someone had gained access to the network, but how that happened, you would be scratching your head about, I think.
Okay.
So, but then after you knew that your network was compromised, you would probably shut it down. You would change all of the, passwords and things and reset it up, and you might be sort of okay. Because you probably would understand that there were parts of the network that were being accessed by people that were unauthorized, and then hopefully there was enough security measures in place that they wouldn't actually be able to see anything particularly confidential. But then there also could be, if they infected the network with a virus or whatever, then that would be detected as well. So the result would be pretty quickly detected. But the actual root cause, probably not, because again, this has been overlooked for many, many years. So I don't think people would expect the vulnerability to come at that point. So to find it, I think would be very tricky, working backwards.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So potentially people have used it before and we just haven't realised.
That's very possible. Very possible. It's just now that finally some good researchers have found it out. And usually when these people find it, when they're researchers like this, what they'll do is they'll release the exact details to the major companies and the maintainers of the big projects, Linux and Apple and Microsoft and Google, a good, few weeks in advance of them releasing the proper details to the public, so that they can go in and fix it before anyone has a chance to do anything malicious with it.
Which hasn't happened in this case, though, it seems.
No, and I'm not sure why that is. But yeah, often that's the case, but not this time.
So these good researchers, are they paid for their exploits?
It depends. A lot of the big companies have... maybe that's the case with this one, that because it is sort of for a fairly fundamental standard, I don't know who is in charge of it, maybe that's why they just decided to release it. Because I think one of the incentives that the good researchers have to not just report these things out in the open and to actually give it to the company involved is that all of Microsoft, Google, Apple, your big organizations have what they call bug bounties, which
right, okay. So they'll pay you if you just
depending on the level of the security vulnerability that you found. Like this is it's a sliding scale essentially, but it can be hundreds of thousands of dollars if you find something that's super fundamentally broken, and then you tell them about it. They will pay you.
So potentially this bug was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars and it wasn't cashed in on.
Potentially, but yeah, I don't know, because it's I don't know, maybe WPA is sort of like an open standard, in which case there might not be any overarching body that looks after this, so there wouldn't be anyone to pay them. Like there's probably no bounty on this particular thing.
Mm-hmm.
Even though everyone's using it, all the implementations are marginally different and they all look after their own thing. I don't know. It's an interesting one.
Okay.
I'm not fully versed on the details of it. It does surprise me that it got out in the open though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like so quickly, but usually they do hide it for a good few weeks, so they give people a chance to patch it.
This is such an interesting concept, the bug bounty concept.
For a long time, Apple didn't.
I want to see the amounts though.
Yeah, we should be able to bring it up.
So you're saying Apple didn't have one for ages?
For a long time, but they have joined the party now. Well, there was this one from January last year. I know this is only an example, but Google paid out $3 million.
Oh, wow.
To a particular security company. But there's also far smaller ones, like there's just like individual people that have been paid out like $3,000, $5,000 for sort of small things.
So people actually just sit around trying to find bugs for a living?
Some people do, yeah. I don't think there's a huge number of them. I think, they're also tangentially usually working on other security aspects, and because they're an expert in that field, they also spend some time trying to break things.
Yeah, okay. Well, that would make a lot more sense. So they're not just purely bug bounty hunters.
Oh, I think there are some people, but yeah, it's usually they're working for a university or something, doing something else.
Okay, so I found something on the Google website. So in the category of remote code extension, applications that permit taking over a Google account, they'll give you $31,337 for.
There you go.
In the category of unrestricted file system or database access, they'll give you $13,337. What's the 337? A logic flaw bugs, leaking or bypassing significant security controls, $10,000. Or if you just want to keep things modest, you can go for an execute code on the client, non-integrated acquisitions, and other sandboxed or lower priority applications, $100.
There you go. But yeah, this has become a fairly popular concept, not only to get people looking for these things, but to also, like I said, give them an incentive not to release it publicly before they get a chance to fix it.
Okay. Well, there you go. I did actually, when I was looking for the amounts, I read on the Wikipedia page that someone had found a flaw in Facebook's security, and because I think he submitted the flaw to them, but he didn't do it properly. Like he didn't submit a proper report, and they didn't believe him. So he posted a letter to on Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook page, which is a bit of a stupid way to go about it.
Mm. It is. There have been
now he's not going to get his
reward,
presumably.
There has been some stories of people not being paid out properly, which then makes people a little bit more skeptical about the whole thing. But enough people do that it still kind of works. Like, that was probably a bit stupid on his part, but these companies don't always want to pay you out because a fair chunk of money they're offering.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Researchers in Russia earned the highest amount per report 2013, receiving an average of $3,961 for 38 bugs. India contributed the largest number of valid bugs at 136. There weren't very many, but that's for Facebook only.
Yeah, okay. And probably in those more developing countries, you can also almost make it worth your while spending a huge amount of time trying to find these things.
Well, yeah, exactly.
If you get a few of those payouts.
Mm-hmm.
Even at the smaller scale. You going to get started, Alex? Hacking away?
No, absolutely not. It's not really my area of speciality. I'm just reading that Yahoo sent out Yahoo T-shirts as a reward for the security researchers for finding and reporting security vulnerabilities to Yahoo.
Well, it's better than nothing, I guess. Barely. Good old Yahoo. Barely relevant anymore.
And then a company in Switzerland said that Yahoo offered them $12.50 per vulnerability, which could be used towards Yahoo branded items such as T-shirts, cups, and pens from its store.
That's just insulting. Yahoo credit.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
that's hilarious.
And that's why those platforms are less secure, because no one's going to be looking for bugs on there.
Well, why would you bother when you could be looking at Google's reward program?
Thanks again for joining me, Alex.
Not a problem, David. Pleasure as always.
You can follow and get in touch with us on Twitter at Tangential Soup, and you can find this week's show notes with more information about today's topics at tsp.fm/27. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider sharing it with anyone you think might also. And we'll talk to you again next week. Bye.
Ciao.
So what's this Tesla insurance, Alex?
Well, look, to be honest, I mean, I only noticed this because...
Insure my Tesla.
Yeah, like, I only noticed it because we talk about Tesla a fair bit here,
and Elon Musk.
And old Elon and everything like that. So I thought it would be an interesting topic of conversation. So basically what Tesla do... I'm not really sure how much you know about insurance, but basically a lot of how much your insurance costs you for any given insurable event is the underwriting on that insurance. So what the underwriting is it's basically the risk assessment of an individual thing being insured, whether it's life insurance, or in this case car insurance, or whatever's being insured. Basically, there's a certain risk associated with it, and that risk depends on a whole variety of factors, including many different things. Basically, what Tesla are doing is they're partnering with different insurance companies in different countries, and they're saying that Tesla cars are going to be cheaper to insure than regular cars. Now, I don't really know what insurance costs here, but insuring your car is a fairly decent cost at the very least, depending on what type of insurance you want. And they're saying that because Tesla have inbuilt automation, basically, so they have the driver assist, which is going to make the car, I guess in their opinion, and they're getting insurers to agree with them, less likely to have a crash. Because you own this Tesla, you're going to get a cheaper insurance deal for it. That's what the whole Insure My Tesla thing is basically about. So they're offering cheap, customized insurance for drivers of Tesla cars. And Australia actually already has this insurance. I'm not sure who offers it, but
Well, that's nifty.
It already exists.
I'm glad we're not getting left out.
Yeah, right?
Well, I guess that makes sense, because like you say, with all the autonomous features of a Tesla, you would think it probably is safer, or at least there's some grounds to think that it could be.
Yeah, true. I wonder who offers it in Australia. Comprehensive vehicle.
Do you do car insurance?
It's a company called Marsh Advantage Insurance.
Marsh Advantage.
Oh, it's underwritten by QBE.
Ah, heard of them.
Yeah, so QBE insurers. What was that? Sorry, do my company do car insurance?
Yeah.
No, we do not. And car insurance is what you'd kind of call a general insurance. So it's things that just, I guess, cover things that are not specific necessarily to you as a person. I know that when you do underwriting for car insurance, there are things that are specific to you, but generally speaking, it's fairly generic insurance. Whereas we do, I don't know, I think there's a term for it, but we just do more specific insurance. So we do insurance for people and incomes and things like that.
Okay. Yeah.
There's no reason, I suppose, apart from the business model that my company has as to why we wouldn't do it. Because most insurers do most insurances.
I was going to say, most of them bundle everything together, don't they? And then give you some sort of discount if you've got your car and home and contents and whatever.
Yeah. But let me tell you, like, these companies, generally speaking, are working with a profit margin of about 10% on their insurance. So really, you're never going to get more than 10% discount. And the fact is, like, there's different kind of underwriting theories that go behind insurance policies. So you may still be better off not bundling your insurance with one company and going with another for, home with one, car for another.
How's it only 10%? That surprises me.
Well, that's 10% like pure in the bank profit. And it's because basically every company, behind every insurance company is what's called a reinsurer. And they're massive companies that reinsure policies all over the world. And what they do is they guarantee, like, I think that they hold, the Australian company that's insuring your car might hold, I can't remember what our margins are, but maybe they might hold 60% of the risk. And then the reinsurer that sits behind it holds 30% of the risk. So essentially what the company is doing is they're taking out an insurance policy on their own insurance policy, and then they're paying another company to hold some of the risk for them. I don't know if all companies do this, but I know that our company does. And it's basically because, we might have $3 billion of risk sitting on our insurance books. We can't cover $3 billion worth of risk. So, we just need our reinsurer to take over some of that. And I don't know exactly what the criteria are for that. Maybe it's just based on what the company can insure themselves, or maybe it's that they just as a standard give a certain percentage to the reinsurer. I don't know, but that's how it works.
That's interesting. I guess it makes sense. So is it the reinsurer that's then making all the money?
Oh no, there's money everywhere. It's just the reinsurer's then taking a slice of the pie, I guess.
Yeah, but they take probably, larger risks overall, I guess. Sort of.
Well, I mean, what the reinsurer will do is they'll make sure that the company that's... all the reinsurer is essentially a bigger insurance company. So they're just an insurance company for insurance companies. They're not really taking a larger slice of risk. It's just they have a larger ability to take on risk.
Right.
So it just allows kind of smaller companies. And like, I know our reinsurers don't operate in Australia, so they have insurance practices that they make us hold to, or underwriting practices. So we're only taking on like very specific, well, not very specific, but like risk within certain parameters. And I don't know, I assume it just allows them to cut out all the stuff that sits in the middle, all the advertising, all the reaching the clients, all the obtaining the clients. They don't have to worry about any of that because they've already got their client. Their client is the company that's sitting there.
They've probably got a lot less overhead though, given that fact.
Well, probably, yeah. And it's quite possible that because of that, they're able to offer reinsurance at a cheaper price or something like that. I don't really exactly understand how it works. But
it's big business, isn't it?
Oh, insurance is massive business.